it's good if you can help kids open their eyes to what they can do with the arts. One of the kids, when I was telling them what I did, but I have a pension as a former teacher, et cetera, so I don't depend on my photography for a living. She said, "Oh, so it's a big side hustle." It is. I was born in Massachusetts. I'm a dual national, so my father is from here in Port Maitland, his family, and my mother is from Groton, Massachusetts, which is a small town about 20 miles northwest of Boston, and that's where I was born. Her family's been there since just after the Mayflower, and Dad's family's been here almost as long, so so a true dual national. So when I was born in Massachusetts, my parents had a place in Florida. My grandparents had a place. And so we used to go down there all the time. And then when I was about 14, Dad got a job at Acadia and we moved back up here. We are here in Port Maitland year round, except we go for a couple of months down to Florida still. So the gallery and studio is here in Port Maitland. I do lessons and things out of here. I do have, I wouldn't call it an outlet or anything in Florida, but I do take work down there and I do a lot of images down there as well. I've been in a couple of shows down in Florida. Photography became quite early. Dad was a biology prof at Tufts University, and at 5 or 6 years old, I was using his Nikon camera to shoot biology experiments for him. He was doing oats bending toward the light and stuff. My great-grandfather was an avid amateur photographer early, so it would have been in the early 1900s. And he did a lot of recording of the family. His wife, my great-grandmother, was an avid genealogist. And so from them very early, I learned to take pictures of things and record what I was doing. But I think seriously, the first photography was when I actually, not that much longer, when I was in junior high. I had a wonderful teacher in grades 6, 7, and 8 who had been influenced heavily by Ansel Adams, who is a distant cousin and a quite famous photographer. And he ran a photography club so that instead of taking art and doing drawing and whatnot, there were 4 of us who got together as a group and did photography instead. And I got a good grounding from him. When we moved up to Nova Scotia, I was 14, and by 16 I was entering Acadia. I actually took pictures as a summer job and while at Acadia. So I took images of, for instance, the football games at Acadia, and in those days you took the print and sent it by either courier or fax to a newspaper. And so I actually sold images that way. There was a magazine, I think it was called the Acadian Journal, that went for a couple of summers, and I shot for them as a summer job. So pretty well what I was doing was trying to cover my tuition at Acadia. I see a lot of people self-taught as photographers, and that's fine, but there are a lot that you can learn from the professional outlets that are there. So the route I chose, there's an outfit called the New York Institute of Photography. It's in New York City. They do most of their stuff sort of a split online and in groups type program. It usually takes people about 2 years to go through. The beautiful thing about that is you're being taught by working photographers, but they explore each of the aspects of photography. So they have like a whole unit on wedding photography, and that was taught by one of the most eminent wedding photographers in New York. So just, even though I have no interest in being a wedding photographer, watching that man set up the lights and do all the posing and all that kind of stuff was absolutely incredible. So I mean, it was an amazing thing to be able to take part in. The online part was they would have you, rather than have to go to New York all the time, they'd give you an assignment and then you'd do it here, send it by mail, and then they would send you back a recording, a tape of the instructor's comments to you personally. So I got feedback from 10 quite well-known photographers out of that whole system, which was invaluable. It was really good. I think in photography in particular, but also in the creative arts just in general, I think having the background knowledge that you can get from these types of courses is invaluable, because what you're being exposed to is how everybody else does things, or how at least they're thinking. And I think that, so for instance, New York Institute, the biggest thing there was really not that much to do with the technical aspect of photography, but it was things like knowing what your subject is before you even press the shutter. So it's a whole mindset that you go through, and you can't get that on your own. Plus it extended it for me, it allowed me to have some other opportunities. So because I was in New York City, the Museum of Modern Art actually offered courses, and so I took a couple from them as well. And theirs was a much more formal classroom setting kind of thing. It was basically a history course in photography. It just gives you an understanding of what people were trying to achieve with photography, and makes you think about what you're doing with your art. But I think Ansel Adams, looking through his works, that really influenced me heavily, because I'm a conservation photographer, so I do a combination of landscape, wildlife, and nature. And Ansel Adams was all about those same things. Joe McNally, I took a couple of courses from him. He's taken portraits of a lot of famous people. He does a lot of sports figures and that kind of stuff. And then the other one would be a more local one in Nova Scotia here, Freeman Patterson, who taught a number of courses that I was fortunate enough to take. And again, he's mainly a nature photographer. I think the common thread through people like Patterson or like an Ansel Adams, those kinds of people, I think the thing that I really got from them was an appreciation of nature, and to talk about how to shoot landscapes, to think about what the subject is, and then how can you best show whatever it is you're trying to show. When I first started with photography, of course, it was costly to press the shutter, because you had film, you had to take the time to develop it, you then had to take the time to print it and all that. Where nowadays the effect is a spray and pray kind of thing, where people just go out and go sort of thing, and then go, oh, I like that one out of 50. And it kind of takes away from like, why are you taking the picture? So I'm much more careful and thoughtful about how I do that. I would make a crappy sports photographer, because I just don't work that way. So conservation photography is basically showing people nature or wildlife in a way that they may not have thought about it before, as an effort to protect something or to help conserve something. So people jump immediately to things like whale watching, let's say, or something like that, which I've done a lot of that kind of photography. One of my first big shows was for birds. I spent about 2 years taking almost nothing but bird photographs. But that extends also to the landscapes and to the nature shots that I do. So just back in 2017, I got the Image of the Year from Leica, and it was for an image I took down here on Port Maitland Beach about the Milky Way. So that was important because it was sort of the culmination of the whole dark skies thing. And now that's become a big tourist thing. Just in a week or two, they're going to have a Dark Skies Festival. And it's because Yarmouth County, and in particular parts of Argyll and Yarmouth municipality, are now known internationally for dark sky things. And it was because we worked together. It wasn't just me, it was a bunch of people. But we worked together to show why it's important to save the dark skies, and so that people can see the kinds of stuff that you can't see in the cities. One of my more awarded, or whatever you want to call it, photos was one of a snowy owl that I got that was down at Kelly's Cove. That particular shot took almost 4 hours to achieve. The big thing there is when you're shooting nature, you don't want to disturb the wildlife. You want to have respect for it. And a snowy owl that finds its way down here to Yarmouth is well out of where it should be as far as its natural habitat. So I didn't want to make it fly. It took almost 2 hours to sneak up on it to get close enough to it that I could get a good image, and then almost an hour to crawl backwards away from it so that I could leave it alone and not disturb it. The image I got has gone around the world. It won an award in Romania, of all places. It was a European photo thing that the Photographic Society of America puts on. But I mean, that's the kind of thing that the respect for nature that you have to have. You have to have the patience and the planning and all that goes into it. On the other hand, I got another picture of a snowy owl that I loved. And it was just that I had a big lens on the camera. The camera was sitting in the passenger seat of my car. I was driving down to Pinckney's Point. The bird flew across the road in front of the car, landed on a post. I rolled the window down, went click, click, and it flew away. And I got a beautiful close-up of the snowy owl. So, I mean, there was no planning, there was no nothing. But I did have the camera in the car and the settings were all set. So there's that kind of thing as well. I just got through doing a job for Canadian Press with Hurricane Lee. What had happened was they found my website on Friday, called me Friday afternoon and said, "Can you get some pictures of people preparing for the storm?" So I went out and did that. I had to know where the surf was going to be hitting to be able to get a shot of what they wanted, which was explosive surf on the shore and all that stuff. And so I went down here to the Port Maitland breakwater, and standing way back with a big lens, I got an image. So the workshops that I teach are again on sort of two tracks. I do lesson sets with people, or I do one-day workshops. I do all kinds of things here. The other thing, I've been fortunate enough to be hired 4 or 5 times now through the Art Smart program, which is run by the Department of Education and the Art Gallery Nova Scotia. And so they hire artists to go out into the schools. So I've done that for 4 or 5 times, where I've gone and given lessons to a school group. And twice now, that group of kids has gone with me, and we've put shows on of their photography. Really fun. That's been a wonderful experience to be able to connect with kids that way. Watching them use photography on their own is really wonderful. So I ask them to think about what it is they're shooting before they press the shutter, and I give them a bunch of things, like we talk about color and contrast, and we talk about all those things. Some photographic principles, depth of field, we talk about framing, the rule of thirds, those kinds of things. But most of it is around trying to get them to go out and just do their own thing. The 3 times we've had shows, the shows have been simply called either Through Younger Eyes or Through a Young Lens or something like that, and it totally open. So it's just, I told the kids to go shoot what they felt was important. And you can see them really grow that way. Because conservation is so broad, conservation photography is so broad, I think continuing in that venue is good. I may shift focus from time to time. As I said, I spent 2 years doing birds. I spent 4 years doing stars. Who knows what, I've got some ideas in the back of my head. The forest fires have got me thinking about basically making photographs of the forest and stuff. So I'm thinking along those lines, but a lot of times it's just whatever I sort of wander around and see. Yarmouth as a creative place, I think, is amazing. And I would extend it to pretty well the whole southern and southwestern end of Nova Scotia. It's a little frustrating because I know if I was living in Halifax, I could probably sell more stuff. So from a commercial standpoint, Yarmouth might not be the best place to be based out of. But as a creative space, I think is great. The Yarmouth Waterfront Gallery that I'm involved in closed down for 3 years because of COVID. We reinstituted it this year with a smaller core group. There's 7 of us as the cooperating artists. And we've got, I think it's 10 or 12 participating artists. But I mean, they're amazing people to work with. I think it's the rural nature down here. I think the rural communities offer themselves to people who are like-minded. They appreciate nature, they appreciate beauty, they appreciate calmness, peacefulness, all that. And those, I think, are things that artists find very attractive.